guys, Laura the Explorer here, asking core human questions. Today, our question is, why isn't life going the way I want? The first thing to talk about in terms of why life might not be going the way that you want is recognizing that we like to control things. We like to control people, we like to control our money, we like to control how we look, how we're perceived. If we could be the creators of the world, we would orchestrate the entire thing. And often we want people to behave like us. The reality of the matter is there's a very painful realization we all go through and realizing that there are a lot of things that are outside of our control. We can't actually control other people. But if our happiness depends on external circumstances going the way that we want, and we don't ultimately have control over those external circumstances, we're setting ourselves up for a lot of suffering. The first component of why life might not be going the way that you want is realizing that you're trying to control too much. The things that we can control are actually very narrow. We think we might be able to control what car we own, how much money we make, our jobs, but in reality, things could happen. We could lose our jobs, we could lose our house, there could be a giant tsunami. I don't think it would come to mountains of Colorado, but who knows what could happen. There are external forces that are at work that have more power than we do. And we try to craft our lives as if they were very predictable and very controlled. One experience that a lot of us have that throws this perception to the wind is grief. When you have somebody that you love who dies unexpectedly, there's nothing quite like it to throw your life up into the air and make you realize that you really don't have control. You don't even have control over how long you'll live. The one thing we do have control over is our minds. We don't even have control necessarily over what thoughts arise, but what we have control over within our minds is how do we respond to circumstances. When you have a thought about somebody else and it's sort of mean and you don't know where it came from, you have control over whether or not you're going to act on that thought. You're going to let that thought perpetuate. You're going to relate to it, see it, recognize it, and then let it go. So you don't even always have control over your own mind and the things that come up. For those of us who have experienced depression, this is a very real situation. When your neurochemicals are behaving differently than you want to control, then we have a very real situation of accepting this reality and deciding how we are going to behave given these circumstances. So we know that there's only very little that we can actually control, and there are a lot of things that we can't control. Given that there are a lot of things that we can't control, the one way that you can reduce your suffering, maybe make life feel like it's going more in your favor, is noticing your resistance. Notice your resistance when someone behaves differently than you want. Notice your resistance when your friend doesn't text you back when you want them to. By noticing your resistance, you start distancing yourself from that reaction. You give yourself a little bit more space to experience something other than suffering. And your happiness is not dependent on those external circumstances. So you give yourself a little bit of distance, you notice the resistance, and then if you're able, through practice, learn to let it go, and not in a flippant, like Elsa style, let it go, but actually, what are the tactical things that you can do to not let that expectation rule you? Let's continue with the example of partner throwing their clothes on the floor. So your partner throws their clothes on the floor. You've tried a lot of manipulative behaviors up until now to coerce them and shame them into doing things differently. And finally, you just decide this isn't working. Let's just sit down and have a conversation. You express why it's important for you to have them fold their clothes, how it keeps your mental space and physical space tidy, and they agree. And you're all happy. But it continues, and they don't actually do it all the time. And you feel like, well, now that you've spoken your voice and they're not following through, you're even more upset than before. So these thoughts start to arise again. Why can't they keep things tidy? Why do I have to keep having this conversation? First, just notice those thoughts. Notice that resistance. Okay, I'm feeling a little upset and angry, and I wish that things were different than the way that they are. And then from there, maybe work with yourself to realize that if this is something that I actually want done, maybe I'm gonna fold their clothes and put them away. Maybe it's ultimately my responsibility. Or you sit with the thought, you see that there's anger there, and instead you start thinking about all the things that you really appreciate about your partner. Maybe a third option is you're sitting with your thoughts, you're feeling the anger, your body is so tight, and you just need to go on a walk. You need to diffuse some of that energy. These are just a couple tactics for that letting go part. It's kind of hard to do, even though it's easy to talk about. We all say, oh, just let it go. And sometimes it feels like we're neglecting the actual experience. Know that you're upset, that you are resisting something outside your control. And then for letting it go, do it gently, not in a way that shames yourself. I can't believe that I got mad at him again. I'm such a terrible partner. Why can't I accept him or her the way they are? But instead, just hold that part of you that's upset that you are limited, that this is outside of your control. And then whatever tactic or tools you start to develop over time that help you let things go. It could be yoga, it could be going on a walk, it could be calling a friend, it could be journaling, it could be talking to your partner right then and there. Anything to help kind of diffuse the emotions in the situation so that it doesn't feel as balled up and resistant. These are just some thoughts as to what might be happening if you feel like life isn't going your way. We all have to come to terms with the fact that we are limited, that there are a lot of things outside of our control, and as humans, we wish we could control them. If you feel this way, know that you aren't alone. There are a lot of us who feel exactly like this, and maybe open up conversations with people. Learning to let things go and to live with life as it is a skill. It's something you have to practice over time to get better at. But one thing that I can promise you is that by doing these practices, by building a different relationship with what you can control and what you can't control, you will reduce your suffering over time, and you'll be able to be more accepting of life presenting itself, other people presenting themselves just the way they are. All right, explorers, I wish you all the best in coming to terms with what we can and can't control and sharpening your tools to help you move forward in a way that feels graceful, that feels forgiving, and that feels filled with compassion for yourself and for the world. I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. Let me know what you're exploring if this was helpful. Feel free to subscribe if you want to explore life further with me, and I'll see you next time.